And of course, the reason that I'm making this video is because time after time, I've said before that these words just mean less white people or less white men. And you know, some people listening to that might have thought that's pretty conspiratorial. But the video that I made last week, where I talked about Anaswar Sarawar demands to tackle racial inequality in schools, supposed racial inequality, and of course he got together some group to drop the how-to guide, the generic how-to guide. And when you did a bit of digging through this how-to guide, it became pretty clear that the people that drew up this how-to guide had a very warped way of looking at the world, intersectional Marxist type shit. And of course the glossary was filled to the brim of unconscious bias, white supremacy, white privilege, race, racism, etc. Basically pandering to this made up theory that society is riddled with white supremacy, white privilege is a real thing, and everybody in society is poor and oppressed because of the evil white man. So in order to make things equal, we need to promote inclusion, diversity, and of course tackle that toxic masculinity, etc. Now, it's impossible to not sound miserable at this point. I'm so sick of this. So more action needed to increase diversity among Scotland's councillors. Equality and Human Rights Commission reports, and of course they've come away with their report on that's all you need now. Sturgeon will roll out the red carpet, it'll be done immediately. This is a shock. This is a shock to the system. This shows real racial inequality in Scotland because of the lack of supposed diversity. So realistically, they're pissed off that there's too many white men. This is what this is, but of course sugarcoat it with your words of diverse and inclusion so you don't have to admit what your real gripe is. More needs to be done to increase the diversity of councils in Scotland. Why? Why is it that we need diversity? It's almost as if they're trying to suggest that if you know, all these different groups that they've created for society, every single group collectively thinks a certain way. That's why you need representation. That's ridiculous. So all the white men in politics just now, they only do things for white men. So we need females in there so they can counter the balance, and in turn what they would do is pass policies, laws, etc. that benefit women. And then of course if you add black people into the mix, they're going to do the same thing if we're going down this avenue. But the major flaw in that whole theory is white men ain't passing laws to benefit themselves to begin with. So any attempts to level the playing field or sign along those lines, it's you then that starts the discrimination and the favoritism, the very things you claim that you're trying to even out. Funny that. Of course you all know this though, you should do. The research, which is the first major study in the experiences of candidates for local elections in Scotland, found a lack of gender balance. Too many men. How dare they? With women making up only 29% of councillors have been underrepresented in leadership roles. Why do they need to be represented in leadership roles? This was never an issue until the UN and Sturgeon decided it was an issue. And now it is the number one issue that continuously drags Scotland down every single day. And Sturgeon will not rest until representation is evenly met. But I ask the question again. How the fuck does a lack of supposed representation equate to any form of inequality? Apart from, granted, the actual definition of equality, you know, if you've got 5 apples on one plate and 5 apples on another plate, that's equal. You've got an equal amount of apples on both plates. But that's not how it works in this term. Because when they speak of inequality in this sense, they're referring to somewhat second-class citizen or a harder life, impoverished, or words to that effect. And it's just shit. So of course, released on International Women's Day, the report also highlights a lack of diversity in terms of age, ethnicity, and people with disabilities, with a recent push to improve representation of women neglecting other minority groups. Oh dear, oh dear. Cross-party survey of councillors candidates at the last election and other party members, some of whom put themselves forward for selection as candidates and some of whom who did not, also found that 48% of women and 12% of the men had experienced some form of behaviour they found to be humiliating, offensive or intimidating. And I guarantee you the majority of the women that felt It's one of those things. Would have been feminists because they take issue with everything in society, so it wouldn't be very hard to get statistics like that. Nonetheless, it's only 48%, so 50% didn't. Among the barriers, the real barriers, this is the cusp of the problem right here. This shows the blatant inequality in society that Sturgeon needs to stamp out ASAP. Barriers to underrepresented groups being selected were a sense of having to earn your stripes. For example, carrying out a certain amount of campaigning, which might be a barrier for women with caring responsibilities in particular. Oh dear. I mean, what the fuck is this, man? That's life, is it not? Other issues included meetings being held in pubs or inaccessible venues, which could be a barrier to those with disabilities and certain religious groups. The timing of some events in the evening and the financial cost of campaigning. Oh my god, talk about first world problems here, where you're complaining that some people ain't represented enough because of the times that the meetings were conducted. Didn't fit their schedule, wasn't inclusive enough. So what do we need to do then? Do we need to have a how-to guide published by an asshole Star Wars teams very soon, presumably? I'm telling you, all you need to do in society, you need to bend, you need to change and conform, to pander to the minority groups in question, because that is the only way to achieve inclusivity. As a result of the findings, the Commission has set out a number of recommendations for improvement. Let's see these recommendations. Up until about 5 years ago, Scotland was near enough an ethno state, and now the absolute condescension from these pro-multicultural bastards, unequal representation, somehow that equates to difficulty when it comes to decision making, or better decisions being taken, where it says the narrower the range of backgrounds, the narrower the range of experiences that are brought to bear in political decision making. This ultimately results in exclusive and unresponsive political systems. Was that right? Because Scotland did just fine until about 5-6 years ago, an asshole. The report represents some of the first times that the experiences and views of candidates for local election have been brought together to consider the potential barriers and enables to greater diversity. Oh, diversity. Fuck your diversity, man. So, of course, they want to bring into force Section 106 of the Equality Act, amending the Equality Act to include a statutory requirement to collect data on local election candidates. Of course, they also want to adopt a system to gather information about the protected characteristics of elected representatives. Oh yes, that's right, because I didn't know this apparently in Scotland now. Protected characteristics is what determines certain subgroups that need to be represented within society. And of course, there's a fuck ton of these protected characteristics that somehow now equate to needing representation somehow. We've got age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, sexual orientation. So of course, political parties should consider publishing an action plan that demonstrates how they're going to increase the diversity of candidates in Scottish elections. Well, short of just putting people in there via a quota system, I don't see how you could do anything that you weren't doing already. Fucking knows, man. Anyway, so they also want to ensure the responsibility for improving equality and diversity. Oh yes, because you want to improve diversity. It's very nice. You can just shove these words in anywhere and it makes it sound a little less irritable. Scottish Government should consider extending the access to elected office fund to earlier stages of the election process to other protected characteristic groups, for example, to cover additional childcare and other care costs that disproportionately affect women. Disproportionately affect women? Oh fuck. Change party culture. Political parties should consider setting clear expectations about the behaviour of their members through a code of conduct for members which specifically prohibits any intimidatory behaviour, harassment, discrimination or victimisation. But you're always victimised. This should include standards of conduct. Oh my god, more demands. This is what I mean, patronising shit, man. Being thin. Make no mistake about it, I'm not actually racist or whatever you will, but this constant far left, condescending, pro-multicultural, anti-white male narrative is really wearing thin. Scottish Commissioner Leslie Sowers said, "While we have seen some progress in greater diversity among elected politicians with representation among women," why do you need fucking representation? Disability, ethnic minorities and young people across all levels of government across Scotland, poor compared to the general population. For example, right, all these white politicians that are in there, what the fuck have they done for me? What the fuck have they done for anyone that I know? They've done nothing. And yet they're supposed to represent me because we're both white. Funny that. It's really worrying that almost half of women surveyed that say they have experienced harassment. Well, right. The diversity of elected local politicians is clearly important because what? Why? With key decisions undertaken at local government level. However, it's also important given local politicians form a crucial part of the pool of potential candidates for selection at other levels of government, including Holyrood or Westminster. And of course, no one has stopped them from getting there to begin with. Granted, it might be a bit more difficult if you're going to compare it to whites versus the odd black person applying for a job, but there's nothing that's in place to prevent them from getting there. It just all depends on right place, right time, or your workload, your work ethic, who knows. But of course, guilt tripping people into employing you because you're black really just sums the whole problem up. Without improving diversity among elected officials, it may be more difficult to make progress across elected politics. What the fuck does that even mean, man? If anything, it concerns me because the more multicultural, pro-far, lefty politicians you let in, the worse society's going to get. That's the way I see it. Dark days for Scotland, man. Peace.